road down there. Better.
Look, I never thought abandoned or forgotten roads would become something I would develop an interest in, but...
Oh,
What the shit?
I'm going on it and I don't even care.
What
Steve,
the
I hope
hell?
you're getting this on film.
I am.
This adventure just got real. Yeah!
Oh!
Woo!
You could say this moment, as I spazzed out with my friend, in the moment, sparked a bit of an interest. And a short while later, while traveling through the Columbia River Gorge, we stopped off to check out the old Bridalveil Post Office, a pretty cool historical spot out there. And as we ventured nearby, we stumbled across the remains of what were at least locally traveled routes, as Bridalveil is more or less considered a ghost town, if you can even really call it a town anymore. This included seeing an old electrical pole there and a set of stairs that clearly, once upon a time, led to a building or some place of some sort. There was even the remains of what looked like some kind of old road just east of the post office as well. And that was back in 2016, when my life as a YouTuber had barely taken off. I probably had about 20 subs when I originally posted some of this video, but now, quite some time later, I'm finally doing a little video about something I feel is interesting. That being stretches of roads in the general Portland area that are abandoned, forgotten, or converted into something else. And of course, when applicable, the history of how those stretches ended up that way. A good little mix of things, something I think is a little fun. Maybe it's not for everyone, you can't make everyone happy. This video is going to include some previously unreleased video along with lots of clips over the past years, only some of which are actually available on my channel, and even then, those are pretty hard to find. So, enjoy. So what got the inspiration rolling for this video? After shooting some video where I-205, 224, and 82nd Avenue all come together in Clackamas County, while walking home, something caught my eye from the nearby bike path. My curiosity was piqued just enough. But I was literally just walking here along the freeway and I just looked down and I'm like, what is that? Could be the end of somebody's, maybe it's a branch off of somebody's driveway or parking lot or whatever, but out here, it just seems kind of unlikely. And then I pulled up Google Maps to see if this even pops up on there, and yes, this pops up as an 84th. So it's still listed all the way to this point. It is listed as an actual route out here that you can drive on, but it seems to branch off of a road that branches off of Sunnybrook. Well, I was thinking about passing on, trying to see it from the other side, at least today. It's getting close to 90, I'm tired. And then this popped up. Trail that branches off, and it hooks onto the road, like, I think really close to where 84th starts. It's kind of cool that this is here, though. We've got the freeway on one side, we've got a bunch of industrial stuff on the other side, and there's this trail that just kind of cuts through, and it comes out at like the road where all this industrial stuff is. So it's not like this is leading me into some great park space somewhere. I mean, I guess you could say this is the great park space. Oh, maybe that's a quicker, nope, never mind. Here, another abandoned road. I thought this, like, were they gonna build a path through here? And then someone just said, nah, nice try, fellas. I don't know. I'm calling it now. It's an abandoned road. It counts. What the hell that used to be. And then, yeah, you turn off, you go down this serene path, and it just freaking brings you out at Costco. This is where 84th turns off. Huh. I wonder if I can even go this way. Nope, can't go through this way. All right, makes sense. That's where like a bunch of police stuff is. I wasn't thinking that was a thing until I saw the police thing. I'm like, this just leads to just police stuff? This seems a little unwelcoming. So anyway, if you go down that road long enough, it just dies and ends. I don't know, maybe that's where the police have target practice. I don't know. I mean, once I turn the corner, there's a big red sign there, stop, no trespassing, police. And I figure, you know, if there's any time to not test your luck and trespass somewhere, it's probably when you're going down a dead-end street and you're gonna be surrounded by police, essentially. Probably not the best time to see if you can get away with a little light trespassing. While a seed of an idea had been bouncing around in my head about various abandoned roads, this random encounter really helped me want to make a reality out of that idea. Even though I couldn't access the street from the other side, a Google car had managed to cover some of this stretch, allowing us to see what 84th looks like on the other end as it abruptly transitions into a kind of a mucky mess. Overhead views do show this stretch is still mostly paved. The main reason for it appearing in its abandoned state, well, you gotta trespass on property maintained by the police to get there. When I first saw it from the other side, not realizing the police were on the other end, I was surprised at first at not seeing more homeless activity. But now even that makes sense. I thought perhaps 84th Avenue went a little further and was cut off like this simply because I-205 was built in its path. According to older maps, they appear to show 84th as it runs near the railroad line, as it does, and then it seemed to hook off east, pre-205, and end near the base of Mount Talbot. Perhaps it was always just a barely used dead-end stretch, or perhaps it had a more primary purpose at one time as an access route to the mountain itself. And just a little south of here, as referenced in my recent video about the history of 82nd Avenue, I made a passing suggestion about what this dead-end stretch in Oregon City might have been. Once upon a time, 82nd Avenue traveled through Portland, down into Clackamas County, and crossed the Clackamas River at this bridge and entered Oregon City. Once here, the route splits, one direction becoming a portion of Washington Street, and the other just fenced off and not going very far, as it too is ultimately cut off by I-205. That's gotta be old. But yeah, you can tell this is like a long abandoned road. Probably was a little wider once upon a time, but slowly on each side, nature has begun taking over. I know railroad lines used to travel through here more frequently. There is a railroad bridge around here somewhere, but if you get down in this brush enough, you can even see the piers for an old bridge are still over there, but there's like remains, there's like rocky remains from a bridge that dated back to like, God, it was like the 1860s or something like that. And I'm assuming this road just ends. I mean, it's got nowhere to go because right around the corner here, the freeway crosses the river right there. So you've just got this like abandoned stretch of road that once upon a time, I assume, just branched off of the Oregon City portion of 82nd Avenue. It's my presumption. At the time of videoing this, I didn't think a whole lot about what this abandoned stretch might have been, but then when I glanced at some old maps, I noticed in some that it appeared this route continued, uninterrupted once upon a time, following the path of what is today Clackamas River Drive, a primary route taking you east towards places like Sandy and Estacada. I've done some work on some films I've done in the past along this particular drive, and wouldn't recommend it. It can get a little dicey in parts. But seeing this has led me to believe that this drive once branched off 82nd after crossing the bridge. And if you look at the makeup of things today, this dead-end stretch still lines up fairly well just across the freeway from that drive. Perhaps, even if I didn't know it at the time, maybe this had a bit of an effect on me wanting to talk about this abandoned road subject as well. There's obviously a plethora of different reasons why a given stretch of road might one day cease to be used as it was originally intended. It has no further purpose, it becomes unstable, it's deemed the route would be better served in another way, like a walking path, and so on. And in some instances, a route is forced to change and yet still exists at a later date. A strong example of this is the former town site of Vanport, erected to house workers during World War II and kept on as a town north of Portland after the war. A flood destroyed the whole town in 1948, leaving it mostly empty for several years. Today, the town site is mostly park space, Portland International Raceway, and a golf course. But the few routes that still go through there share the names of the routes that went through there when Vanport still existed. To the north end, there are still remnants of Force Avenue and Victory Boulevard, very wartime sounding street names, and on the south end there is still a Cottonwood Street, as there was before. Then there is this main path going between the golf course and the Yellow Max train line, which is only accessible as a pathway. As you can see, it's gated off. This route goes in line with what was once Broadaker Street, or Broadacre Street? I honestly don't know. And that name, to this day, actually still shows up as the name of this stretch on Google Maps. Nope, the water has not overtaken it. Here we frickin' are. A very much ignored relic, I have to watch out for my feet here, of the original Vanport. I have a lot of theories on what this was used for. I heard that there was elements of the old amphitheater out here, and I thought, this kind of looks amphitheater-ish, but that was in another location. Obviously people know this location is here, I just don't think a lot of people are aware of its historical implications. Right here along this little stretch of water, yeah, I got some footage of a heron out there in the water last time I was here. But yeah, most people who visit this spot, the only place that I've ever really seen photographs taken is of this particular, which is definitely, historically significant, but this piece of railing that it looks like it probably went on longer one way or another and was broken off here. I almost wonder if at one time there was a matching one over there. A counter to this Vanport site comes from another spot south of Portland, in the Jennings Lodge area where an evangelical center used to stand, dating back to near the turn of the century. Some old viewers probably know about this place. I ventured by it a few times. The location would finally be closed down in 2013 and was left fenced off and vacant for several years, at which time I was living only a few blocks away. This gave me an elevated interest in this old site, and it was an urbexer's paradise right around the corner. But while some routes in Vanport became inaccessible after its demise, some routes through here would only become accessible again after this place's demise, and I'll elaborate. I gave this place a pass by a few times, catching some clips of it, uncertain exactly what was going to ultimately happen. There was some back and forth going on as there were hopes of preserving some of the structures on the property, but developers were also planning on converting it into housing. Come 2018, that transition started taking place, and I was there at least for the early stages of that demolition. Despite being a single property at the time the Evangelical Center was closed down, it still had a few roads going through it. This one right here, fenced off and being reclaimed by nature, was Southeast Morse Street. I shot this clip in late 2016. get ready, because when I returned a few years later, this is how that stretch looked. But despite being completely redone, this right here is still Morse Street, a route once abandoned and now accessible again. Another route through the property was called Faith Avenue, which wrapped around to River Road, the entryway to the center at one time. While slightly south of that point today, right here is where you see present-day Faith Avenue come out. You can see some spaces in some of the clips I took where Faith Avenue ran within the center at some point when it was obviously open. I knew all of this was coming, but it still blew me away finally seeing how this place looks today. I felt like I was visiting a place I'd never been to before. And from there, we're right back into Portland. With all of the exploring I've done in this area over the years, there's a few times where I unknowingly stumbled onto a place where roads no longer traveled through. One happened while I was venturing around the Montavilla area back in 2020. I learned recently that a small stretch of Stark in this area had been decommissioned in the vicinity of 73rd Avenue. Knowing I'd videoed in this area before, I went back and checked and found that I had in fact taken video of that exact spot, not realizing that the guardrail you see was partially blocking what used to be a through street.
Because I might get a view in here, because you can see Stark down there, and it's like a much bigger street. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a view past the trees here, but like we're on Stark right now, this little dead nothing street. And then there's Stark Street, more as it usually looks. Wide, hustle and bustle. There's the bank. I live like just south of that, so that's kind of about how far I gotta go and more in this direction.
Looking at this old map from the 1920s, we can see Stark used to cut right through here, unobstructed. But then if we look at a map from today, we can see the block between 73rd and 74th is no longer there. So, once upon a time, it appears Stark weaved its way up a little hill and just kept going. And, while referencing stuff from recent videos, as I've already done a couple times, when I referenced in my Mill Ends Park video about Mill Ends Park 2, that park is located where Stark and Washington Street come together near 74th Avenue. If you look at some of the footage I took, in particular this angle looking west, you can see a gravel uphill drive just left of center. That is where Stark would have once gone up and connected with itself again at 74th, just over the ridge. I don't know exactly why this one block was cut off, but considering how this intersection looks, my guess is that it was done for safety's sake. And some 4 years later, only now have I found I randomly filmed this location from 2 different perspectives. Another one I had not planned, even though I had been through there before, was this little present-day pathway in the hills around Maclay Park, northwest Portland. I produced an over 40-minute long video almost entirely from this spot, which, as I would later learn, is where Cornell Road used to pass through. Today, Cornell, a prime route to take through the hills to get to the west side, in particular Beaverton, cuts through a tunnel next to the path that was completed in 1940. But with Cornell Road dating back well into the 1800s, obviously an alternative route had to exist at one time, going around the hillside the tunnel now cuts through. And a little further on, Cornell cuts through yet another tunnel, wherein, again, there is a pathway wrapping around it. While these pathways aren't the original set-in-stone Cornell Road, they do represent the previously existing routes that once had to pass through there. While pre-tunnel Cornell Road pictures are in short supply, we can see representation for the road that once existed, taking a gander at some old maps. Now, if we look at the site of the first or easternmost tunnel on a map today, we see the road. After going through the tunnel, it angles slightly afterward. And yet old maps of the road pre-tunnel show at this point a sharp downward turn before turning sharply back upward again. If we match this with that trail next to the tunnel, as though it is still Cornell Road, it lines up just about perfect with the old map's representation of what the road used to look like. I've passed through here numerous times, mostly doing cross-country practices back in high school, and always just assumed this trail was purely there to get walkers from one side of the tunnel to the other. Prior to the construction of these tunnels, there was increased emphasis on improving the quality of the routes that got one through the West Hills. And we have to remember, there was no Highway 26 or Vista Ridge tunnels at this time. The most practical routes were either Burnside Street, which would then become Barnes Road, or Cornell Road. Thus, these routes needed to be improved, in particular to handle the possibilities of increased traffic over time. These tunnels were erected so as to improve the potential flow of traffic. This makes sense, again in particular by this first tunnel, as the road used to make multiple sharp turns here. Also, where the path is today, it lingers along a cliff's edge that likely would have left Cornell very narrow and probably more dangerous as it passed through there. It would have been pretty tragic if either some rocks were to tumble onto this former road area and crush a vehicle or ram it over the edge, just as well as if some rock along the edge of the now pathway were to give way and send some vehicles tumbling over and crashing down into Beckley Park somewhere. Had these tunnels not been done at the start of the 1940s, it's likely they would have happened not too long after, and possibly as a result of a tragedy. Similar to this situation is a now closed down stretch of road referred to as McLaughlin Avenue in Oregon City.
Yeah, you see there's some rocks here to let you know no motorized vehicles. I mean, I guess, unless you have like a little scooter. Oh my god, I'm still winded. Took another baby rest. Just because I was still breathing so heavily. So here is where the no longer accessible stretch of the road begins. So, once upon a time, this was... how many times have I said accessible? I believe there's a park right up there. But yeah, this kind of reminds me of the Leif Erikson Trail up in Forest Park, which used to be a road that people could travel down. Hasn't been for a very long time, but this is just so cool that this little piece is here, and you can tell it hasn't been driven on in a while because of all the moss.
Due to the effects of the flood of 1996, which took a major toll on the lowland portions of Oregon City, a large landslide occurred near this avenue, and it was closed down as a precautionary measure. At least, that's what I've always heard. It's a nice little walking path today that conveniently borders a small park.
Aha! I called it. It was in the aftermath of the 1996 flood, which makes sense in Oregon City. And yeah, see, it's a very brief stretch. Once you get out here, where these rocks are, that's already the end of it. It's just this small stretch. This would be... I mean, I guess there's not really a need to drive down this road. I mean, there's another road probably a block or two over that can get you from down over there to up over here and down here. So, I suppose there's not really a need for this road. Like, there wouldn't have been any houses here. This is too thin, and this is a steep hill. There wouldn't have been any houses. Here's a trail that I'm kind of curious about. So yeah, and then it just comes out here, probably like 2 blocks down the street. But according to like Google Maps and information I've gleaned, this was known as McLaughlin Avenue. The thing is, from here on, I don't even think this is called McLaughlin Avenue. It's like just this one little baby stretch.
And while in Oregon City, again, in producing a video down there specifically about abandoned stretches of road, I made my way a little further south to visit what I think, personally, is the creme de la creme of abandoned roads in the Portland area. Granted, there are several I haven't seen and probably never heard of. That being Waterboard Park Road.
But yeah, this is already really cool.
Once a nice quick route to get one from the top of the hill down to the city below, this closed down road starts off unassuming enough. You'd think, well, this isn't too bad if you're climbing from the bottom of the hill like I was. But as you climb, you quickly realize why there ain't no traffic coming through here anymore.
This would have been a nice little road to shimmy my way up at one point, though. And like here, it's still in pretty good shape. I think it's a little further up where, and obviously down there, it ain't too great. Yeah, I take back everything I said about how road's not in that bad a shape. Yeah, this is pretty rough through here. I mean, big deal. Your car slides down. You'll make it down there. You'll be fine. Oh my God. But this is nothing compared to what we're about to walk into. What the hell is this? Okay, it's starting to get real steep. Look at this though. I mean, you can crouch down like below street level. Guess we'll just climb up these steps. Actually, a pretty cool rock formation over here, but there's a bunch of dudes hanging out there. So, oh man, we got another collapse. Jeez. It's a wonder how that even syncs up with this. And it was cool because you get to see all the jagged rock that existed under the road. Yeah, right here is about not a great spot to have a vehicle. No real protection from toppling off down this way. Okay, I'm trying to climb out of this thing. Okay, I made it. So we're finishing the last little climb here on, I forgot what it was called, Waterboard Park Road. That was more fun than I thought it would be, or at least more appealing. But this is why I wanted to start at the bottom and go to the top, was because of the view. At the top, the end of the road here, there's a viewpoint.
had a general idea of what I was getting into with this one, but even with that, I mean, it really didn't get any better than this. And when I realized it would be a meandering mess to wander along the highlands up there to find an alternate way to get back down to the city, I just went back down Waterboard Park Road. So as you can see, a lot of these roads no longer in use have been converted into walking paths of some kind. No shocker. If a road is closed, not on private property, and not a massive danger to those traveling by foot or by bicycle, just make it a pathway. And there are multiple other instances of this that I have stumbled onto in my ventures. When I was out vlogging around the Columbia Slough not too long ago, after starting out near Vanport and walking south, I noticed the old faded reminders of a road once there. Taking a look around, I found that this stretch of the path was actually a former on-ramp, taking people from the Vanport Delta Park area onto Interstate Avenue, heading south. Around 2015-2016, this on-ramp was altered to swing sharply east, leaving this old on-ramp out of commission. But it's fine because instead of a thin sidewalk to walk along, people traveling through here have a nice, wide trail to walk now. And another path I have walked extensively on in the past is the bike path that runs along I-205 on the east side of town. Who hasn't been there? I've hit just about every part of that path at some point or another, and while adventuring around the Gateway Green area around 2017, this happened.
Back up, the multi-use trail has gotten considerably wider. Or maybe this isn't the multi-use trail. Maybe this is just... No, I think this is the multi-use trail. Oh, there's a plane coming in for a landing. No, I think it's too small. Oh, this used to be a street. This actually used to be a street. You can see the old yellow. So they were like, you know what? Why bother keeping the multi-use path going? We'll just turn... I wonder what this street used to be. 102nd's like right up there above the freeway. I wonder if I can find some like old maps, because this is like definitely an old street that's not being used anymore.
Initially, without much thought, admittedly, I was perplexed how a street like this could have randomly cut through here once upon a time, as my mind was stuck in the present day, wherein a road wedged between I-205, I-84, the Red Max line, and a hill leading up to 102nd Avenue didn't make any sense. I then looked back at some of those trusty old maps to find the answer, and lo and behold, prior to I-205 and I-84's existence, Northeast Hancock Street became Hancock Drive at 92nd Avenue, which wrapped up right through here before angling towards 102nd Avenue. But with Hancock potentially intersecting with 102nd, there was one problem, which is that they would have intersected right where the 102nd Avenue viaduct is. This left me a little confused until I discovered that Hancock Drive actually went under the viaduct along the railroad line there. In this 1964 overview of the viaduct, I'm pretty sure that that is Hancock Drive right there, and it lines up with where we can still find the remains of it to this day. Hancock Drive still exists for a few blocks, running east from 92nd Avenue to an oddly large and vacant cul-de-sac near I-205 that doesn't sync up with all of the other streets near it that also cut off because of 205. It really makes it look like Hancock Drive had more prominence than these other streets surrounding it, because it did. It seems Hancock's primary purpose was being the route taken to reach the Rocky Butte Jail towards the southeast side of Rocky Butte. Maps even dating back to the late 30s, just a couple years before the jail opened, don't show Hancock Drive being there at all, which leads me to wonder if it was explicitly made in the first place because of that jail. And as far as where it ended, because it mashes up against the railroad line on so many maps, it's a little hard to say, but my main guess would be that it ended at Fremont somewhere just a little east of 102nd.
Like I was walking along and all of a sudden I look down and realize I'm walking on an old street, an old abandoned street.
And that brings us to the spot I chose to save for last. Perhaps because I've been there many times, dating back to around 2002. That being the road formerly known as Hillside Drive. Today, you may know it as Leif Erikson Drive. After a lengthy exploration in 2022, walking most of the Wildwood Trail through the West Hills, I produced a short video about the history of this particular drive, which was originally completed in 1915. The objective was for developers to start building homes up in the hills, and they needed a road to get people there. Alas, while the drive was constructed, running from the end of Thurman Street up to Germantown Road, it was never safe for traffic. Landslides and downed trees were a frequent occurrence, and thankfully, this allowed this area to become what it is today: massive park space. In the early 1930s, this stretch was officially renamed Leif Erikson Drive, primarily motivated by a push from a fraternal organization known as the Sons of Norway. While efforts to revive it as a road were never successful, when the land became part of Forest Park, Leif Erikson became another path within it, just one fairly distinct from all the others. Hence, it has more of a logging road type vibe to it. But beyond this route alone, some of the many trails that cut through Forest Park also used to be roads, ones that I assume were also fairly treacherous. In the aftermath of Forest Park becoming a reality in 1948, the stretches these roads went through became other trails. Namely, the route primarily listed as County Road 466 on some maps is where Saltzman Road wrapped through the hills. This is almost all path today, except for a small portion that branches off St. Helens Road and another small portion on the other side of the park crossing Skyline Boulevard. In an almost identical manner, a little north of Saltzman is Springville Road, which is mostly a trail now as well. However, the start of it branches off of Bridge Avenue near the St. John's Bridge and goes a short distance before converting into a trail. It too briefly revives itself as a road near Skyline before continuing off west of there.
We're colliding with another trail. So Wildwood continues on this way. Springville Road. Yeah, this was referenced. So my guess is this was probably actually like a road that cars went down once upon a time. So I'm assuming Springville goes this way. I go up that way.
Another road listed in old maps as Willalaton still exists, but is fenced off at Skyline Boulevard today. And just south of there, a short stretch of College Road still exists, which previously went deeper into the woods of Forest Park. We can also see there were several other short roads in the area that are either no longer there or have been converted into trails at some point. I almost wonder, knowing how much of Forest Park is inaccessible, what little remains of the people that were settled there once upon a time, what maybe is still existing on those grounds. That's just me, though. It's a truly fascinating aspect of this area, as before doing some learning, I assumed Leif Erikson Drive was the only trail in the area that had previously been a road, which I now realize is kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but, never let presumptions become reality, because it can truly keep you from discovering some pretty cool things. So, I know this video's a little bit different from my others, a bit of a combination of how I used to do content with how I do it now, It's really just a start of marking down and noting all of these vacant, abandoned, or converted old roads in the Portland area, and I guarantee I've only scratched the surface with this video. But it's a fun little transition. I definitely learned some new things, and it's an opportunity to include recent work along with some old ventures I went on back when very few people knew of this channel. As I discover more abandoned stretches, such as these, I may even do a follow-up to this video, and if you know of some cool stretches, such as these, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm sure there's a few more I've encountered that I've just forgotten about. And all that said, thank you so much for stopping by, whether you're a new viewer or a seasoned subscriber. Either way, I'm just happy you're here. And if you want to help this channel out a bit, the link to my Patreon is included in the description of this video, along with several links to past videos I've done. I'm really trying to post more on my Patreon and give you supporters more reason to stick around there. Till next time, this has been Steve the Amateur Historian.